I'm pregnant.
Suddenly, that's what Barbara, who claims to be my best friend and a colleague, told me. She said the father is my fiancé. I, who felt out of place and burdened at work because my fiancé was taken by an incompetent woman, ended up resigning. Little did I dream that a great reversal in life awaited me. My name is Sandra, and I'm 28 years old. I work in the cartoon section of a publishing house. It's odd to say this about myself, but I am fairly competent. I handle 3 cartoon artists. One is a hit maker who's a star of the magazine, another is a veteran with enthusiastic fans. And the last one is a promising newcomer who seems capable of carrying the magazine's future. They all trust me with their manuscripts. The basic job of an editor is to assist the cartoon artists under their charge and ensure the manuscripts are finished by the deadline. This includes gathering materials, delivering them to the workplace, bringing refreshments to encourage the assistants, and sometimes brainstorming ideas together. Being a cartoon artist means creating worlds with just a pen and giving dreams and hope to the readers, I believe. Actually, I used to draw cartoon during my student days. I had a dream of becoming a cartoon artist, but realizing I lacked the talent, I decided to help bring cartoon to the world by becoming an editor. Sandra really loves cartoon, says Donald, my colleague and boyfriend. We've been dating for about 2 years now, and we're talking about getting married soon, so he's practically my fiancé. It's not a job where sitting from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is enough if a cartoon artist I'm in charge of contacts me. I often have to rush over outside of normal hours, so it's hard to match schedules with regular office workers. That's why dating Donald, who's also in editing, is convenient, though it's tough to find time for dates.
Sandra is lucky with her charges.
That's Barbara speaking, another colleague from the same batch. She used to edit for a girls' cartoon magazine at the same publisher. But after being disliked by a female cartoon artist she was in charge of, she had to change departments. While it's true that cartoon artists can be difficult or eccentric, in this case, I think Barbara was the problem. She's often late, full of excuses, and quick to blame others. Still, because she looks cute and seems modest and quiet, it was suggested that she might do better handling male cartoon artists for a boys' magazine rather than female ones for a girls' magazine. Which is how she ended up in my department under circumstances that might be frowned upon nowadays. Maybe I'm lucky, but I also put in the effort. I want to help create good cartoon. Barbara, do you even know the food preferences and hobbies of the cartoon artists you handle?
But I bring them trendy sweets and stuff.
It's not about what's trendy. You need to bring what they actually like. Some people don't like sweets, you know.
Even though I lined up to buy it, I get told, I've mentioned before I don't like sweets, haven't I?
Let me guess, you bought that Mont Blanc the other day because you wanted it yourself. And just picked up something extra for the cartoon artist? Prioritizing yourself over your charge, what's that about?
That's fine, isn't it, just this once?
Not fine at all. Buying what you want and then just getting something extra as a courtesy. And then using that as an excuse to line up during work hours.
Well, not everyone is as passionate about their work as Sandra. I wish I had a cute girl like Barbara to handle,
someone said, making me feel down. Donald. I didn't like their unserious attitude towards work. Yet, since they were the only batch mates I could speak openly with, we often went out for drinks. Barbara prefers older men. She says her boyfriend is almost 20 years her senior.
I lost my dad when I was little, so I guess I'm drawn to older men. They're kind and calm, and I don't get girls who date guys their own age. Hey. Saying that in front of us, a couple of the same age?
Barbara knows that Donald and I are dating. I can't imagine being with someone 20 years older. When I'm 50, he'll be 70. That's like a grandpa. We joked around like this, somewhere relieved that Barbara wouldn't become a love rival. One day, when I was meeting Donald for a date, Barbara called, saying she was feeling unwell and asked if I could pick up a manuscript in her place. I could have refused, but the cartoon artist Barbara was handling was actually someone I'd been personally supporting since their debut. Paul is a mid-30s male comic artist with talent but hasn't been blessed with a hit series. I had to cancel my date with Donald to pick up the manuscript. Ah? You must be Sandra, right? What happened to your usual person? I was happy that he remembered my name even though I had never handled his work before.
Barbara is unwell, so I came to pick up the manuscript instead.
Ah, she often seems to be in poor health, doesn't she? Is she frail? Is she okay? I had never heard that she was physically weak. It seems there are times she's refused requests using her poor health as an excuse. Hearing stories about messed up autograph session arrangements. Her bringing a fan letter that arrived 6 months ago, or bringing an apple pie for Paul despite his apple allergy made me frustrated.
The other day, I asked for photos for reference, and she emailed me blurry photos found on the internet. If that were enough, I wouldn't have bothered asking.
The teacher sighed. I apologized on behalf of her and promised to give her a stern warning.
Is my comic unpopular because it's not that great?
He said something so sad.
I've been a fan since your debut work. I even buy your books and line them up on my bookshelf.
To which I confessed. Paul was delighted and said,
Really? Then I'll draw your favorite character for you.
And he carefully drew my favorite character in my notebook. I was so happy I forgot my anger at Barbara.
But she's so analog these days, wants analog materials, and it's weird she sends fan letters by mail.
When I firmly scolded her, she didn't reflect but insisted she was not to blame.
There are still many people who prefer analog. There are plenty of fans who handwrite letters filled with their feelings. Don't just do your job carelessly because you find it troublesome. What? Sandra, you're kinda scary. What we do is support comic artists to produce good work. Bringing them food they're allergic to or otherwise hindering them is actually harmful, not helpful. But I didn't know that. Can't be helped, right?
That was a lie. Paul had said he informed her clearly. Then Donald arrived and joined the conversation.
What's going on here? Some kind of fight? Donald. Sandra's being really harsh.
She whimpered to him with a voice pretending to cry, but without any tears.
Barbara, did you make a careless mistake again? It's not about being careless. I'm talking about an attitude towards work. We don't need an editor who troubles the comic artists. Hey! That's too much. Don't judge people by your own standards.
I never thought my fiancé would take her side. Looking back, I think this was when our relationship began to deteriorate. Our views on work and our priorities were different. I should have ended things quickly, but perhaps I still had feelings or thought it could be fixed, so I couldn't let go of Donald. Afterwards, Barbara was removed from handling Paul's work. Because Paul had asked the editor-in-chief if his editor could be changed, but out of misplaced consideration. They didn't tell Barbara the truth, so she believed I had snitched on her to the editor-in-chief.
How awful! Snitching to the editor-in-chief. I just warned you. I didn't snitch. Why am I being replaced then? That you're taking over proves it.
Indeed. Paul had requested the editor-in-chief for me to take over if possible. While this was very pleasing, it only fueled Barbara's belief that I was responsible for her being replaced. The thought of managing 4 comic artists seemed daunting, so after consulting with the editor-in-chief, we decided to let Barbara handle a hitmaker cartoon artist. This artist works in a production style, with plenty of staff to gather materials and handle events, and never misses a deadline. Basically, what an editor does is go to pick up manuscripts and bring refreshments. So I thought there wouldn't be any trouble with Barbara taking over. Barbara seemed pleased, saying,
"Actually, it might have been a stroke of luck. Paul isn't very well known, and many of my friends don't even recognize his name. But from now on, everyone will know who I'm talking about."
This made me quite angry, even though she seemed to have forgotten her anger towards me.
"I'm sorry if my request to the editor-in-chief caused trouble with your colleagues,"
Paul said to me the first time I showed up at his workplace. I don't know how the word got out, but such news spreads quickly. "No problem. I'm happy to be assigned. I'll work hard to make up for all the trouble Barbara caused. Please let me know if there's anything you need." When I say that,
"Thank you. I'm sorry to bother you so quickly, but could you please find me an assistant? I asked Barbara a long time ago,"
I said, thinking it's unbelievable how little work she did. I arranged for someone who could draw in Paul's style and wouldn't disturb the workplace atmosphere too much. Since he is single and meals during work mostly consist of delivery, including for the assistants. I arranged for someone to prepare meals, and I also cooked when I visited. With no manager to handle day-to-day tasks, I took on as many of those duties as I could.
"It's a huge help. You get perfect materials when I ask, and I've gotten much more time to draw."
I was pleased to be appreciated. Originally, Paul's work, while not flashy, had a unique worldview and humor, garnering many passionate fans. I'm one of them, but I think he must have struggled a lot, wanting to spend more time on his art but being bogged down by miscellaneous duties and lacking assistance. Perhaps because he now had more time and mental space. The popularity of his ongoing series began to rise, and I was praised by the editor-in-chief. Then one day, Donald said he wanted to talk and asked me out to dinner. Maybe it was about marriage. Or perhaps a breakup. Either way, I felt it was time to clarify things. However, when I arrived at the restaurant we had arranged, Donald and Barbara were sitting together, side by side, not opposite each other. Feeling something was off, I sat down across from them.
"Sandra, I'm pregnant,"
Barbara said as soon as I took my seat.
"Huh? It's Donald's child." What about the older guy you were dating?" "Ugh, we broke up a long time ago."
Barbara leaned into Donald, who was sitting beside her.
"But I thought you weren't interested in guys your own age." "That was true, but love doesn't need a reason." "Huh?"
Then Donald spoke.
"I want to start a family with her." "So do it?"
"Huh?
"If you want to be a family or whatever, go ahead. If that's all, I'm leaving."
As I got up to leave,
"Wait. I feel bad about this."
"Sorry, Sandra," they both said. Barbara's smug face at that moment made me incredibly angry.
"It's fine. You two suit each other."
Donald then said with a downcast look.
"I got tired of you acting superior just because you're good at your job."
I didn't intend to, but that's how he felt.
"I wasn't looking down on you. It's just a difference in how we view work. That's why you two are a good match."
I left the restaurant with those words. I didn't feel sad. There was frustration, but it was more about losing to Barbara than about losing a fiancé I loved. I should have initiated the breakup sooner. Thinking of Barbara's triumphant face made me feel terrible. It seems she intends to continue working even after getting married. While our editorial department doesn't interfere in personal matters, Almost everyone knew about my relationship with Donald. And suddenly, the couple had changed. Everyone loves a good scandal, and all sorts of speculation were flying around. I became famously known as the woman whose fiancé was stolen by her supposed best friend. I don't recall ever becoming best friends with Barbara, but she must have been spreading lies about it.
I knew he was my best friend's boyfriend, but I fell in love anyway.
I can't help it. She seemed to have cried, casting herself as the tragic heroine. But it wasn't just Barbara. Donald too.
Sandra's treatment of Barbara was terrible. Watching that made me drift away from her, and I felt I had to protect her.
Apparently, I was the bad guy, the so-called best friend. According to them, I harassed Barbara at work, took away the comic artist she was in charge of, and drove my fiancé away. Though I think those who know my work ethic didn't believe even half of it, I felt uncomfortable nonetheless. And I had to face those two every day.
Sandra, I'll give you an invitation to our wedding. You'll attend as a colleague, won't you?
When Barbara handed me the invitation, I decided to quit.
I won't be your colleague anymore, so I won't attend.
With that, I submitted my resignation letter to Charles, the editor-in-chief. Charles tried to persuade me to stay, suggesting we talk in a private room.
I love this job and I adore the comic artists I work with.
But it's too painful to continue working here under these circumstances. Then Charles said to me,
honestly, it's more of a problem if you quit than if those two do.
Would you reconsider? Obviously, those two weren't highly regarded.
Thank you for your kind words, but I need some time to relax my mind and body.
I refused, and proceeded to inform the comic artists I was handling about my resignation, bringing them refreshments. They were all sorry to see me go. And some even said they wanted to work with me again if I switched to another publisher after their current series ended. Paul, thinking he was the reason for my resignation, apologized more than was necessary, making me feel guilty.
I was also delighted to work with you, Paul. It's a real shame.
I genuinely felt that way, wishing I could have helped more as his popularity was on the rise. Then, Paul said,
if you haven't decided on your next job yet, would you consider, if you're okay with it, doing something like being my manager?
What? Since you took over, it's been much easier to work, and I've gotten used to it. I think I can't manage without you. I can pay you the same amount you're earning now.
Ah, but if you were earning a lot, maybe I can't afford it.
His proposal was hesitant but heartfelt. And since he was a comic artist I greatly admired.
I'd be delighted. If you're okay with me, I'd love to help out.
And so, I became his manager. My salary turned out to be much less than Paul had feared, so there was no issue. Paul might seem laid back, but he never compromises on his cartoon. Working together, his love for cartoon and his own creations became even more apparent, and I grew to like him even more. The person who took over my role was a male colleague I had helped when I was new, surprised to learn I had become a manager. He mentioned understanding why Paul's work had been going so well lately. He said he wouldn't say anything, but eventually, my former company would find out I was working with Paul. I knew that, it's a small industry, but I didn't mind. My only concern was to continue creating great work with Paul. One day, he said excitedly,
"Hey, Sandra. Recently, the female characters in my cartoon have been gaining popularity. It's thanks to you. You gave me a lot of advice."
I had thought his male characters were fantastic, but his females lacked a bit of flair.
I really don't get women's psychology at all, so it's been a huge help. This character, acting cute on purpose. I thought she was annoying, but it's fun to draw her, and she's surprisingly popular. It might be thrilling in a cartoon, but having someone like that around in real life is awful. That character, Barbara, was the model for her, right?
I said, and Paul.
Really? I see her, huh?
Laughed like a child.
This girl character is based on Sandra, right? No, not at all. I'm not that cool. She's more like an ideal woman. Really? I've always thought this character resembles you and is wonderful. That's why I put a lot of effort into drawing her.
I was happy to know he saw me that way, and it felt almost like a confession.
Does that mean you think I'm wonderful?
Did I say something like that?
Oh, I did.
Sorry, that's creepy, isn't it? He apologized, looking downcast, which I found endearing.
Not at all. I love your cartoon, but I also admire and love everything about your work ethic and you.
Paul might look geeky, but to me, he was infinitely more wonderful than Donald ever was. Book sales were booming, and an anime adaptation had been decided. The media coverage and interviews increased. As a manager, these were happy problems to have. I had almost forgotten about Donald and Barbara, but I had business at the editorial office.
Right, those two got married.
Thinking this, I went to the editorial office and saw Barbara, noticeably pregnant.
Long time no see.
I greeted her cheerily, but she just glanced at me and walked away. After handing over some legal documents to the editor-in-chief and being invited, we moved to the cafe. It's been tough since you left. The editor-in-chief sighed. The hitmaker comic artist Barbara was handling got furious.
What? The one who's supposed to be stable no matter who handles him?
I was surprised. It turns out she upset him by asking, "Why don't you switch to digital drawing? Everyone's doing it these days." Regarding the few tasks she had, like picking up manuscripts and bringing refreshments.
I've apologized many times, and now I'm handling him.
Barbara is sorting documents, but even that's not going well. But you can't fire someone just because they're incompetent at their job. She's all set to take maternity leave and parental leave. Charles sighed again. Donald's reputation isn't great either.
I had him take over the veteran comic artists you were managing, but everyone compares him to you, saying he's not as considerate or fast.
I keep getting complaints, he said, looking dejected. I felt sorry for him, but there was nothing I could do. I was relieved to hear that the newcomers were being handled by capable people. On my way out, I passed by the document room and saw the two of them talking, obviously not working. Not working after all. Donald noticed me.
Long time no see. You're doing well, aren't you?
And said with a defeated look.
Yes, I am. With the anime and possibly a game adaptation, it's busy but fulfilling.
I smiled, and he clicked his tongue. I couldn't believe I was once engaged to such a man.
Oh, by the way, I'm getting married to Paul. I'll be supporting him as a manager and a partner from now on. No way. He's been making a lot of money recently.
Barbara reacted to that, which was disappointing. Neither of them had a word of congratulations to offer. To top it off,
"It's unfair that you got to manage him after me,"
she complained nonsensically. So, I decided to tell a lie.
"Yeah. We're planning a grand wedding and honeymoon around the world. And we're thinking of buying a high-rise condominium for our new home."
I showed them a ring with a large gemstone. The ring was the only truth, the rest was made up on the spot. Though it wasn't impossible to make it happen. Seeing Barbara's deeply frustrated face was satisfying.
"Paul's just a geeky guy, right?"
Donald said, trying to save face. He really is a petty man.
"He's a talented and wonderful person, worth dozens of you."
That's the truth.
Well then, I wish you both happiness,
I said and walked away, hearing them argue behind me. Afterward, Barbara was apparently sued by the wife of the older man she used to date, demanding compensation. It seemed he wasn't single after all. Donald was saying the baby might not be his, but it's uncertain until the birth. They were already looked down upon for their lack of competence and motivation. And with this scandal becoming known, I wondered if even they would find it hard to stay at the company. But considering their shamelessness, it's hard to say. Either way, I can't imagine a bright and joyful future awaiting them.
a lavish wedding, a reception, a trip around the world, and a high-rise condominium, huh? Shall we make it all happen?
Paul said, laughing after hearing my story.
You're not one for showy public displays, right? The idea of traveling the world is tempting, but it would mean taking a long break from the series, and I don't want to disappoint the readers. I don't care where we live. All right. Then, once this series ends, let's take a super long vacation and travel the world. Let's. And we'll take lots of photos for reference. You really are the ideal editor. But from now on, it's okay to be a more selfish wife.
Paul says. Just imagining the world with cartoon makes me happy, but becoming any happier might just ruin me.
It's like a miracle. Then the house is mine. If you have a complaint, let's get a divorce.
Just after Dad Adam had passed away, my husband Cody was gleefully boasting about having changed the house's title into his name, which made me dizzy. Changing the title like that shouldn't be so easy. I thought maybe Cody was misunderstanding something.
Then we can get a divorce, but won't you regret it?
Cody, not expecting me to agree to a divorce so easily, let out a dumbfounded huh?
I won't.
With an expression as if to say, "Are you stupid?" Cody replied. I see. He won't regret it. Then, I won't hold back. Don't come crying to me later. I scoffed at Cody's naivety in my heart. My name is Regina. I'm 35 years old and work as a civil servant. Being serious by nature, it's quite fitting that I landed a job as a civil servant. When I passed the civil service exam, my parents were delighted. That's because Dad always told me to choose as stable a job as possible. Whether being a civil servant is absolutely stable is debatable nowadays, but so far, there haven't been any problems, and I feel like I can continue this job. There was a reason Dad wanted me to have a stable job. After graduating from college, my dad joined a startup company. Filled with enthusiasm for his upcoming professional life, he dived into a company with just 10 employees, hoping to improve his skills. However, surviving as a company for even a few years is quite challenging. The company Dad joined went bankrupt just 2 years later. Dad tried to find another job, but couldn't find a suitable one. So, he decided to start his own company. With little know-how in business, Dad started managing a restaurant and gradually expanded its performance. As the number of stores increased and more employees were hired, he had to worry about sales and profits daily. Most of the stores were renovated vacant or owned houses, so there was no rent. Thus, the more customers, the more profit, amassing $3 million in assets over 35 years. But, of course, it wasn't easy. Running a business as unstable as management meant accumulating daily stress. Once the business started to profit, people driven by greed appeared, complicating human relationships. There was even an incident where an employee ran off with the store's money. Building assets is not straightforward. That's probably why Dad wanted me, his daughter, to live comfortably without going through the hardships he faced. I'm satisfied with being a civil servant, a job that fits my personality well. Though not wealthy, I can lead a normal life without issues. That's why I thought the best was to continue living peacefully.
Tomorrow night I'll be late. Don't wait up for dinner.
How many times has Cody said this? As I was washing the dishes after dinner, I dried my hands with a towel and turned to ask.
Again? Is there that much overtime at the factory?
It's our busy season. Cody works in a factory making semiconductors, doing line work. 18 years have passed since he started this job right after high school graduation. Processing parts that come down the line for 8 hours a day is indeed hard work. I could never do it, but for Cody, it seems easier than a job that requires thinking.
Right. Semiconductors have been in short supply recently. Must be tough.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, but I think I'll be late for a while. Okay. Good luck.
Lately, coming home late has become the norm, and sometimes he doesn't return until the date changes. I can't imagine he's working that late, so he must be going out for drinks after work. While I understand the desire to soothe a tired body with alcohol, it seems to be happening too frequently. But I can't possibly say such a thing to Cody. Telling him not to go out for drinks when he's already exhausted from work might make him angry. Fortunately, the drinking money should come from Cody's allowance, so it wasn't too much of a problem. As I watched Cody go to the bedroom, I rolled my shoulders. They've been stiff lately. The stress of living past each other is probably making me tense up. I tell myself not to take things too seriously. I met Cody when I was a sophomore in high school. He went to a nearby boys' school and approached me during a cultural festival. He was a year younger and asked for my contact information. Initially hesitant, I gave in after his persistent pursuit. Why he was so interested in me, a girl whose only trait was being serious, was a mystery. But embarrassingly, he said it was because he liked my looks. Cody seemed frivolous at first, which worried me, but I soon found out he was surprisingly devoted. And I quickly grew fonder of him than he was of me. Even after graduating high school, with Cody working in me going to university and becoming a civil servant, he remained my boyfriend. We got married when I was 27. Unfortunately, we haven't been blessed with children since then. I think it might be too late now. But I'm okay with it just being the two of us. If I can continue living with Cody, who hasn't changed since we met, that's enough for me. Cody probably feels the same. During our busy yet tranquil married life, I received a call on my mobile phone. Hello?
Hello, Regina? Oh, good. Are you at work right now?
Yes, but what's up? It must be something urgent for Mom to call in the middle of a weekday. I asked what happened. It's serious. Adam collapsed, and after some tests, they say it's colorectal cancer.
Cancer? No way.
Hearing the word cancer from Mom, I couldn't believe my ears. There had never been any cancer patients in our family. But Dad, being a business owner, had indeed neglected his health checkups. So, it wouldn't be strange if he had been sick without realizing it. It's true. It's quite advanced.
That can't be. But cancer is curable these days, isn't it?
The thing is, given Adam's condition, he might only have a few months left.
A few months? That can't be.
I wanted to believe it was impossible. But Dad was only 60, young, and it made sense if the cancer was progressing rapidly. Especially since it was discovered late. No matter how much medicine has advanced, curing late-stage cancer is difficult, Mom explained tearfully.
Understood. I'll come home for a while. I'll let Cody know too.
Thank you, Regina. Dad is very important to me. There was no way I wouldn't rush to his side in a crisis. Cody would understand. That day, I finished work unsettled and went home. Cody was home early for a change, and seeing my pale face, he asked,
"What's wrong? You look upset."
Cody was drinking beer on the sofa. I told him everything Mom had said. And I asked if it was okay for me to go home for a while.
"That's tough." "Understood. Stay by Adam's side." "Thank you. But I won't be able to cook for you." "No worries. I've been getting home late from work anyway. I'll eat out." "Make sure you eat something nutritious once in a while." "I know."
Cody listened to me calmly, which was a relief. Feeling reassured, I started preparing for my return home tomorrow. As bedtime approached and I was about to enter my room, I heard Cody talking on the phone in his bedroom. It seemed he was on a call with someone. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I stopped when I heard a word that caught my attention.
"It seems he's about to kick the bucket soon. Can you do something about that thing we discussed before?"
Kick the bucket. Was he talking about Dad?
"Yes, I see. Thank you, I appreciate it."
I couldn't tell whom he was talking to or what exactly they were discussing, but it was clear they were talking about Dad. But why would he say such a thing? I had never heard Cody speak ill of Dad. They weren't particularly close, but he wasn't heartless enough to not care about Dad's condition. Yet, Cody seemed indifferent about Dad's situation. And though Dad was terminally ill, he was still alive. Discussing Dad's posthumous matters with a stranger was unthinkable. For the first time, I felt suspicious of Cody. After that, my doubts about Cody never faded. "Take care," he cheerfully saw me off to my parents' home, but I couldn't stop worrying about what Cody had said on the phone. Cody was up to something. When it comes to Dad, it's about money. I never told Cody how much Dad's assets were. I thought talking about money might lead to trouble. We could discuss the inheritance when the time came. It's not time yet. Not that I was hiding it, but I didn't think it was necessary to talk about. But what if Cody knew about Dad's assets? And what if he was after that money? No, I should stop overthinking. Trying to shake off the bad thoughts, I took care of Dad and enjoyed our small talk.
"Thank you, Regina. Tamara. I'm a lucky man." "Don't be so formal. You don't need to say that."
It's too early to be thankful. While Mom and I tried to dispel the gloom with laughter, only Dad smiled knowingly, squinting his eyes. That life with Dad ended too soon, 3 months later. Both Mom and I were unprepared for such an abrupt farewell. During the funeral, I was stunned, unable to accept the fact that Dad was no longer with us. On the contrary, Cody seemed alive and well, and I couldn't help but wonder. It was about a week after the funeral when my heart finally settled. As I was drinking alone in the living room, Cody came in.
Finally, all the hassle is over,"
he said coldly, crossing his arms behind his head.
"Hassle?"
"Yeah.
I was hoping Adam would kick the bucket soon, but when he did, the funeral and everything was a lot of work." "Hey, that's no way to talk. A person has died? And that person is my dad. How can you say such a thing?"
I leaned in, incredulous at Cody's words, and retorted. Just as I thought. Cody had been hoping Dad would pass away sooner. I remembered Cody talking about Dad on the phone with someone. What was Cody's aim?
"So, when do I get the inheritance? The Regina family is super rich, right? I know there's a lot of inheritance waiting."
That's when I finally understood Cody's intentions. I never thought Cody was after Dad's assets. Because I never talked to Cody about my family's money. But it seems Cody had realized Dad had quite an estate.
"You look surprised."
Of course, I know.
My family has always been dirt poor, struggling to eat 3 meals a day. Compared to that, your family lives comfortably, and your parents travel frequently. Just from that, I knew you were rich. So, I consulted in advance. Consulted with whom?
Without any shame, Cody had deduced my family's financial situation and indeed mentioned he had consulted someone after revealing his thoughts. I remembered the day Cody was on the phone in the bedroom and thought that must be what he referred to as consulting.
I have a lawyer acquaintance. I asked him about old man's inheritance. I'm definitely getting my share.
Well, I was appalled that Cody had discussed Dad's inheritance with a stranger without my consent, even while Dad was still alive. I doubted whether the creature standing before me was really my husband.
Don't worry. I'll be getting an answer soon. Looking forward to it.
With that, Cody went back to the bedroom. He probably planned to contact that lawyer acquaintance again. I was taken aback by Cody's outrageous behavior. Where on earth does one find a husband who investigates his wife's parental inheritance on his own? The inheritance issue was my family's matter, not something for Cody to interfere in. Growing increasingly distrustful of Cody's actions, I found myself unable to speak to him. We lived in a Cold War state for a while, but the situation took a sudden turn a month later. Putting aside the fact that Cody was talking about inheritance, Dad's assets were rightfully passed on to me and my mother. I inherited a $2 million mansion from Dad, which felt beyond my worth. I had no immediate plans to move into the inherited house, but it seemed too wasteful to just let it sit there. As I was pondering whether to use it as a vacation home or to sell it, Cody spoke to me for the first time in a while.
Regina, how are you?
Living in the same house and asking how are you felt ironic. I ignored his words and picked up a book nearby.
Don't ignore me. I've changed the deed of the mansion you inherited to my name.
Hearing those shocking words, I looked up from the book I was about to read.
What do you mean? I asked that lawyer I mentioned before to take care of it. The procedure? You mean the change of ownership?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't believe it, not just that he did it without telling me, but also that the lawyer agreed to such a thing.
Now the house is mine. If you have a problem, let's get a divorce.
Dad had just passed away, and here was Cody, gleefully boasting about changing the house's ownership to his name, making me dizzy. Changing ownership shouldn't be that easy. I thought Cody must be misunderstanding something. I hesitated about whether to retort to Cody. I was utterly furious at Cody's actions and couldn't easily forgive him. So, instead of retorting here, I wanted to devise a plan and get back at him properly.
Then it's okay to get a divorce, but won't you regret it?
Cody, seemingly not expecting me to agree to divorce so readily, let out a dumbfounded huh?
No, I won't.
Cody replied with a look as if to say, are you stupid? I see. He won't regret it. Then, I will not hold back. Don't come crying to me later. I scoffed at Cody's naive thoughts inwardly. Afterward, I began investigating Cody's background using all means available. First, I took some paid leave and thoroughly searched Cody's room while he was at work. Cody's messy room was filthy, with various items scattered all over the floor. Among them, I found something and picked it up, slipping it into my pocket quietly. Then, I tampered with the computer on Cody's desk, opening a messaging app. So this is the lawyer. The exchanges with this person named O'Connor were appalling. Most of them were about money. Moreover, it was about how to steal illegitimate money. I sighed in dismay. Cody, who was swayed by such a person, even seemed pitiful to me. Then, I left the room and headed to a certain place. After repeatedly engaging in laborious tasks, I went to confirm Cody's greediness. The more I investigated, the more I realized I had been living with such a person, and it sent shivers down my spine. After finishing the investigation on Cody and cooling off, I went to submit the divorce application. Since Cody had brought it up, filling in the necessary information and submitting it was simple. The divorce application was accepted at the office, and I officially divorced Cody. It was an unexpected divorce for me, but I no longer had any love left for Cody, who insulted Dad. The Cody I once knew was no more. Investigating revealed that Cody was a terrible man. Submitting the divorce application, the house was no longer mine. This house was originally bought in Cody's name, and there was a mortgage on it. I thought it would be proper for me to leave, but Cody did not return home from that day onwards. Probably, he is living in the mansion I inherited by now. Wonder if he's enjoying his life now. But, how long will that last, I wonder. I was very calm, thinking about Cody's future. And then, 3 days later, Cody finally appeared before me.
Regina, you've already submitted the divorce application.
As he entered through the front door, he asked with an anxious voice. Cody's sudden return and rude question made me reply with a what?
So, are we divorced now?
Cody raised his voice, seemingly in quite a panic.
Yes. I submitted it 3 days ago. So now, you and I are strangers. What?
A look of despair spread across Cody's face. Despite Cody being the one who asked for a divorce, he looked at me as if I were to blame.
Why would you do something so selfish? Selfish? You were the one who said we should get divorced, didn't you? What's this all about now?
Faced with my logical response, Cody fell silent for a moment. I had a hunch why Cody was suddenly blaming me for the divorce.
Regina, please. Marry me again, otherwise
This time, Cody slumped to the floor, kneeling and looking downhearted. I asked him with a look of pity.
Oh, why? What happened?
I pretty much knew what had happened, but I decided to feign ignorance and ask anyway.
Just now, debt collectors came to my place. I called O'Connor, but it seems he's changed his number, and I can't reach him at all. I sent messages, but they're not being read. That guy, he tricked me.
O'Connor was the so-called lawyer Cody mentioned. Cody's story was disjointed, but I had the gist of it. I had guessed what Cody had been up to when I searched his room.
So you've been gambling all this time. I found all sorts of betting slips and bingo hall receipts in your room, and I even checked with the nearby poker room about your visit history. You've been going there for about a year, haven't you? That's why you ran out of money, right? When I checked our joint account, I noticed small withdrawals that I didn't recognize, and I realized you had even started dipping into our money. And then you got scammed by that lawyer?
Yes, Cody had been gambling behind my back all this time. I had wondered why he was coming home late, not because he was out drinking, but because he was gambling. When Dad died and I inherited the assets, he must have thought it was an opportunity. He consulted with the man called O'Connor, a supposed lawyer, on how he could inherit the assets.
That's right. I regret the gambling. But I was also tricked by that man. It seems the mansion you inherited isn't mine after all. I'll go bankrupt at this rate. Isn't that pitiful? So, help me.
He had initiated the divorce himself, and now he was pleading to get back together. I was beyond angry at Cody's disgraceful behavior. Had he forgotten how he wished for Dad's death and disrespected him? I couldn't even think of him as my ex-husband anymore.
Huh? What are you talking about? Aren't you the one at fault here? Pitiful? Do you think I would feel that way? The reason you were scammed is because of your own foolishness. The assets I inherited from Dad are considered separate property, not subject to division or unauthorized name changes. Yet, you were easily deceived by O'Connor and now you come crying to me? I will never forgive you.
Cody, seeing my demonic expression as I firmly stated this, shrunk back in fear. I walked past Cody, opening the front door.
Well, I'm moving to the mansion Dad left me. You can live in this house as you please. Good luck with the mortgage payments. Wait!
Ignoring the pitiful man calling after me, I briskly walked away. A week later, I received a call on my mobile phone. The caller was Cody's mother, Catherine. I braced myself, thinking she would blame me for the divorce, but it was the opposite. "Oh, Regina. I'm sorry. My son has done something terrible, hasn't he? I don't know how to apologize."
No, you don't have to apologize for anything.
"No, I can't let this go. He even came asking for help to pay off his debts." I'm appalled. I told him he's going to get a thorough lecture from me at home. He won't be gambling again, that's for sure. He'll learn the value of money. For a while, he'll have to manage work and household chores on his own. Catherine, furious over Cody's misdeeds, was determined to make him suffer the consequences. I smirked to myself, wondering if he could endure his mother's discipline. This was his punishment for insulting Dad and trying to swindle my inheritance. I felt not a shred of pity for him. He should work hard on paying off his debts. As I declared, I moved to the mansion Dad left me. The furniture was already there, so I didn't need to buy anything new. I had to buy clothes and other small items since I left them at the previous house, but thinking about my new life of freedom made me excited. The new house is really spacious, almost too much for just one person to live in. I've had enough of marriage for now, but if time passes and I meet someone nice, I'll invite them over to this house. They're sure to be so surprised they'll be speechless. Just imagining the reaction of a future husband I haven't met yet makes me burst into laughter.
Dad, thank you.
Grateful to Dad for leaving me such a wonderful asset, I'm ready to take a new step forward. I'll never forget the shock of running into my husband Kent at our best friend Sarah's baby shower. It seemed Sarah didn't know that Kent and I were married. Anyway, the idea the two of them had a child together. That was beyond belief.
You two look so happy together, I'm almost jealous. Oh dear, to be the odd one out in our trio of friends. Sarah, Kent, I hope you guys find happiness, no matter what.
Sarah nodded with a full-faced smile, while Kent did awkwardly in return. I knew the truth. I knew Kent was the kind of man who'd say, "Pregnancy is not an illness, so don't be lazy." He wouldn't lift a finger to help a pregnant woman. To think he'd cheat on his wife, with our close friend no less, was beyond comprehension. Asking for forgiveness? That was out of the question. I decided it was time for him to lose everything. My name is Lucy. I'm a hairdresser in a small town. This is where I was born and raised. It's not as flashy as the city, but it's a comfortable place to live. The sense of community here is just right, making it a great place to call home. Kent and I were high school classmates. Back then, our friend Sarah and us were known as the inseparable trio, always together. Especially Kent and I were the class's official couple. Whenever someone asked, "Where's Kent right now?" I could answer precisely, often teased, "You're going to make a great wife someday." The third member of our trio, Sarah, was always plugged into her earphones, listening to British music or the radio, dreaming of England. She was one of the top students in our class. Sarah achieved her dream, attending university in England, and after graduating, we only exchanged messages a few times a year. After graduation, I went to vocational school and became a hairdresser. Since my family owned a beauty salon, I started working there. As for Kent, he joined his family's business after attending a local university. That company sold beauty products like shampoo. Interestingly, the company was a business partner of my family's salon. The connection was another reason our relationship was often the subject of playful comments. Kent was reserved, not much of a talker, the opposite of talkative me. Yet strangely, we got along well, and our relationship from high school led to a marriage without a formal proposal. We bought a house in the city, started a new life in a spacious home. Sometime after our marriage, I became pregnant. Overjoyed to be carrying Kent's child, I happily shared the news that night.
Kent, guess what? I'm pregnant.
I was eagerly waiting for his joyous reaction, but what I got was anything but enthusiastic. "Oh, is that so? Aren't you happy?" Silently, he started fiddling with his mobile phone, searching for due dates and birth stories.
The baby will be here next year. Make sure you wrap up your work by then.
Is that all you have to say?
What else is there to say?
I guess nothing. I was honestly disappointed with his attitude, but soon, I found myself in a situation that left no room for such concerns. My first pregnancy was tougher than I had imagined. I used to work full-time, but sudden bouts of illness and doctor's appointments often made it difficult. Reluctantly, I decided to take maternity leave earlier than usual and focus on my health. However, Kent was unsympathetic to my condition. He searched the standard duration of maternity leave on his mobile phone and confronted me with it.
Aren't you taking off too early? Our income will soon decrease.
My job is physically demanding, and everyone's health conditions are different. Besides, my mom said she'd handle the salon while I'm away.
Pregnancy isn't an illness, so don't be coddled. If you're like this, our child won't amount to much.
He would even say such things, even though it's his child too.
If it's my child, it has to be excellent. You need to make an effort too. If you become a lazy housewife, I'll divorce you right away. You've been slacking off with the housework, haven't you? The meals are sloppy, and the house is a mess.
I just can't manage it all right now. I have a limited diet. Can't you at least prepare your own meals? In fact, he was completely reliant on me for household chores. Growing up in a family business, I was accustomed to housework from a young age. Whereas, it seemed he never had to lift a finger at home, thanks to his mother being so diligent. Men in our family don't do housework. It was his mother Catherine's mantra, suggesting a belief that it was a woman's role. While I admired her dedication to household chores, it resulted in Kent being clueless about even basic tasks like laundry. That was a source of quiet frustration for me. As I was pondering how to discuss this with Kent, I suddenly needed to use the restroom. Those who've been pregnant might understand, but at that time, I needed to go quite often.
Sorry, I need to use the restroom.
Again?
Aren't you getting a bit old for this? When the belly grows, bathroom breaks become more frequent.
How disgraceful.
You're always complaining about your health lately. It's like living with an old woman.
He then started a long rant about his grievances. But I was desperate to use the restroom. And frankly, I was uncomfortable with his incessant complaints and old woman comparisons, and just wanted to leave. When he finally took a breath,
"I need to use the restroom,"
I managed to say. But he snapped,
"I'm not done talking yet."
Somehow, I endured his lengthy tirade and rushed to the restroom at the last possible moment. How uncool. Behind me, his voice could be heard muttering. Initially, his calm and unflappable demeanor was what attracted me to him. However, since finding out about the pregnancy, it feels like everything is backfiring. Moreover, he compares me to various people he reads about online.
That celebrity was back to work right after giving birth, and her figure was perfect too. You'll be the same, right?
I don't know. Don't compare me to such incredible people so casually.
You're both human, just give it a try. Don't disappoint me too much.
Apparently, his expectations were ridiculously high. Besides, his information came from the internet, but he naively believed dubious facts. Every time we met, it led to such conversations, creating a tense atmosphere between us. Around the same time our baby was conceived, he started spending less time at home. Our arguments like the ones I just mentioned were one reason, but he also began going out at night or on weekends, claiming it was for work. That was not something we had seen in our life together before. He was the exact opposite of the increasingly popular image of a cooperative, involved father. One night, when he came home late, I decided to confront him. "You've been busy with work lately, haven't you?"
"I'm cultivating new clients. It's none of your business."
"But Kent, have you been drinking?"
"This is my refreshment." "Stop nagging."
His voice was so loud it could be heard outside. Sure enough, I could smell the alcohol on his breath. You never had to drink after work before. What's going on?
You wouldn't understand. Besides.
Thus, his sneering began anew.
You're just lazing around at home while I work every day. This isn't fair.
I'm not lazing around. I'm quite busy preparing for the birth.
That's no excuse to neglect the household chores. You don't even put on makeup anymore. It's like you're using pregnancy as an excuse to abandon your femininity.
That's terrible. Holding back tears, I went to put his bag on the shelf, when something small fell to the floor with a clatter. What are they? Wireless earbuds? I picked them up casually and studied them closely. They were small, shaped like earrings, and in a cute pink color that many women would like.
Don't touch my bag without permission. That's an invasion of privacy.
I always do this. But Kent, you don't usually use earbuds, right? If they're lost, we should return them.
That's for me to worry about. Just focus on your chores. Why can't you even manage that properly?
His reaction was far too intense for just pointing out a lost item. As I was about to respond, I felt a dull impact in my abdomen. He had kicked me.
Don't forget you're being provided for. Keep your unnecessary comments to yourself, or I'll have to rethink things.
I couldn't grasp what had just happened to me. After he stormed off to his room, I sat on the floor in a daze, replaying the recent events. I couldn't see how I had done anything to deserve being kicked. I couldn't comprehend his reaction. The next day, just to be safe, I went to the hospital to check on my baby. I couldn't dare say my husband had kicked me, so I lied that I had fallen at home. Fortunately, there were no abnormalities with the baby, but the area where I was kicked was bruised and discolored. Amidst that, some good news arrived. My best friend Sarah had given birth. She had gone to university in England and I heard she settled there for work, but apparently, she had returned to the US. Ideally, I would have brought Kent along, reuniting the trio of friends after such a long time, but unfortunately, he was away on a business trip. Reluctantly, I went to congratulate her by myself. In the bright, sunlit hospital room, Sarah lay in bed, looking relieved. As I entered the room, she struggled to sit up.
It's been a while. Congratulations on your baby.
Thank you. I actually came back to the US about a year ago but couldn't get in touch, sorry. I'm just glad the baby is safely here. She looked more refined than when she was a student, more grown up. By her pillow, I noticed earbuds identical to the ones I found in Kent's bag. She seemed to notice my gaze. Oh, these? They're my favorite. I lost one recently, but my honey found it for me.
Really? What's your husband like?
Actually, we're not married yet. You know what? The guy is. Her words were interrupted by a knock on the door. Entering the room was none other than Kent. I was so shocked, I couldn't speak. You must be surprised. Actually, I'm dating Kent now. She seemed unaware that we were married. She smiled innocently before my eyes.
Hey, long time no see. How's it going?
Kent's shameless demeanor pushed my confusion to the max. It's a reunion of the trio. I started seeing Kent again after returning from England. But with all the paperwork, we haven't married yet. I see. As you can tell, I'm also expecting a baby. I felt an overwhelming urge to reveal everything. But I paused, regaining a bit of calm. I had a baby in my womb. I had to protect my child and myself. I pondered the most effective way to handle this predicament. In the end, I decided to keep things peaceful for now. My husband is on a business trip right now. I really wanted to bring him along today. That's a shame. I wanted to meet your husband. It's really unfortunate. But having a husband like yours who accompanies her must be infinitely better. My husband doesn't help out at all. I secretly glared at Kent. He deliberately looked away. You two look so happy together, I'm almost jealous. Oh dear, to be the odd one out in our trio of friends. Sarah, Kent, I hope you find happiness, no matter what. Sarah nodded with a full-faced smile, while Kent did awkwardly in return. By the way, this is a gift for the baby. I heard you can never have too many bibs, so I got these. I even got matching ones for my baby. That's adorable, thank you. You must be excited about your baby too, Lucy. After a healthy delivery, we should all go out together. At the mention of all of us, Kent's shoulders twitched slightly. I pretended not to notice and continued smiling cheerfully. Hey, let's take a photo while we're here. Sarah, hold the baby. And Kent, get in close. I captured the moment of Sarah holding the baby with Kent beside her in a photo. With a forced smile plastered on my face, I left the hospital room. Before I realized it, I was breathing heavily, my shoulders heaving. From beyond the door, I could hear Sarah's excited voice and Kent's low murmurs. Upon leaving the hospital, I hurried home. I opened my mobile phone and immediately contacted a real estate agent. Yes, I know it's sudden, but I want to sell my house. Yes, right away is fine. I want to complete the process quickly. Could you also refer me to a moving company? I made arrangements to sell the house and contracted a moving company that the real estate agent recommended. Next, I called my in-laws. Catherine? Due to some urgent matters with Kent, I'll be sending over some belongings. Don't be alarmed by the amount. Right, I had decided to erase the house I lived in, as if it never existed. Kent said he would be away on a business trip until the next day. He's probably planning to stay somewhere tonight. While part of me wanted to send the belongings directly to Catherine's house without warning, she wasn't to blame. At least I informed her. After finishing these tasks, I noticed incoming calls from Kent. In fact, since leaving the hospital, he had been calling incessantly. I ignored them and read a book. Then, a message came in.
Let's talk, just the two of us.
What was there to talk about in that situation? Moreover, since the incident where he kicked my abdomen, a sense of caution towards him had sprouted in my mind. At that time, the caution had turned into suspicion, and I didn't even want to hear his voice. Once home, I immediately started packing. I entered his room and without hesitation began boxing up his belongings. Fortunately, it was the off-season for moving. I was able to sign up for a plan where the movers would help pack, making the shipping process smoother than expected. All that was left was to send my own belongings. After contacting my parents, they rushed over and the move was completed promptly. There was something I found in Kent's room. It was a partially completed divorce application. He was planning to leave me for Sarah and marry her. It seemed convenient, so I filled in the rest of the divorce application and decided to keep it safe. Just then, I received a call from Catherine.
Lucy, I knew you were sending some things over, but I had no idea it would be this much. What on earth happened?
The truth is, Kent has been having an affair. Do you remember Sarah from high school? It seems he has a child with her. I could sense her shock over the phone. Despite feeling sorry for her, I continued. I'm sorry, but I have proof. I'll send you a photo. I sent her the photo I took in the hospital room of Sarah, the baby, and Kent together.
I don't want to believe it, but it's true, isn't it?
I wish it wasn't. But it is. I'll be staying at my parents' house from tonight. She apparently tried to contact Kent after that, but couldn't reach him. When she asked if I knew where he might be, I unexpectedly replied that he was no longer family to me. She understood my determination from my response. That evening, I took my essentials and returned to my parents' house, sleeping peacefully in my old room. The next morning, Kent contacted me.
Hey, our house is empty and there's a for sale sign up. What's going on?
Don't you understand? Your home isn't there anymore. For now, your belongings are at your parents' house. I'm changing the locks tomorrow, so coming back would be pointless.
What have you done? Let's talk, at least.
Fine. How about this afternoon at your parents' house? I'll contact your mother. I ended the call quickly and started preparing to go out. That afternoon, the involved parties gathered at my in-laws' house. Kent's parents, my parents, Kent, and me. Catherine's face was noticeably pale. Surprisingly, she was the first to speak. Kent, is it true that you've been having an affair with your friend Sarah? Affair? No, we just started dating later, that's all. I don't want to hear excuses. And now there's a child involved. Looks like we were just really compatible. The next moment, Catherine punched Kent.
What have you done? Lucy is carrying your child. How could you face her?
I had never seen the usually calm and elegant her like that. A trickle of blood ran from Kent's nose, but he seemed unaware.
Ouch. What are you doing? It's natural for a child to come from a loving relationship. How can you even say that?
I interrupted the parent-child argument. First of all, how did you end up dating Sarah?
I ran into her at the bus terminal while I was out on business. She had just returned to the US and was busy with a new job. She had a charm you didn't, Lucy.
That's not a reason to start a relationship, is it?
Ever since high school, I actually liked Sarah. But she was out of reach, so I settled for you.
I was speechless at his brazen words.
Meeting Sarah again and reminiscing made me realize she didn't have bad feelings for me. There's no reason to stop us now.
He had kept his marriage a secret from Sarah. When Sarah became pregnant soon after they started dating, he considered divorcing me. Around the same time, I became pregnant too. He reached that point without the courage to divorce or the determination to remarry.
How can you justify such selfishness? Aren't you ashamed of two-timing? Sarah and Lucy are completely different. Reuniting with Sarah made me realize how unsatisfied I was with Lucy. I plan to remarry Sarah and step up as a man. Don't be absurd. To think my son could do something like this, I'm so disappointed.
Catherine's anger knew no bounds.
If that's how you feel, our parent-child bond is over. You're also fired from the company. You're on your own from now on. That's fine by me.
Honestly, I was skeptical. Could Kent, who had only worked in a small family business, really handle another job?
You have no idea. The reason you could work till now is thanks to Lucy's salon.
What?
Lucy's salon? That small town shop doesn't significantly impact my performance. The only reason you had any success was because her shop promoted our products. Ungrateful.
Listening silently, my parents announced they would cease business with Kent's company.
It can't be helped. I'll start my own business. I'm still young, I can learn. With Sarah returning to work soon after giving birth, our new life is secure.
I muttered into my mobile phone, so he says. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed.
Are you stupid?
From the beginning of the discussion, I had been on a video call with Sarah.
If I knew you were married to Lucy, I wouldn't have been involved. It's like I'm betraying her too. I'm speechless at your naivety. Frankly, you lack talent as a business person. Why are you there? I got in touch with Lucy and decided to join this discussion. I'm glad I heard everything. I never want to see you again. Wait, don't leave me. Why should I be with someone as awful as you? I'll raise the baby alone, just don't show your face. Of course, I will expect child support.
Realizing remarriage was off the table, Kent suddenly turned to me, almost pleading.
Lucy, I was wrong. Let's forget everything and raise our child together.
Continue this marriage with such a despicable man? No way. I can't forget the terrible things you've done. The shock of seeing he appear in Sarah's hospital room was fresh in my mind.
Don't spoil the mood. Isn't your kindness your best quality?
Unable to give up, he was staring intently at me. His mouth agape, his nose bloodied and clotted, he was a picture of disgrace. I shook my head slowly. Just because things didn't work out with Sarah, you think you can come back to me? That's too convenient.
But what about you? You'll struggle too, won't you? How do you plan to raise the child?
I have skills, and I'm much better off without a husband like you. I'm not foolish enough to cling to a foolish man. My parents had discussed it with me on the previous day, and they assured me of their full support. Being in customer service, they have good contacts with reputable law firms. I presented the divorce application I had found in his drawer. As you can see, the divorce application is all set. All that's left is to file it. Let's quickly settle the compensation and child support.
Wait, I have to pay both Sarah and you.
Of course. I am your wife, after all. But don't think I'll overlook any negligence towards Sarah's situation either. I have a lawyer ready. He was at his wit's end. At that moment, I felt an unprecedented pain in my abdomen.
Oh my, it hurts.
My labor had started right at that moment. The discussion was obviously adjourned, and I was rushed to the local hospital by my parents. From there, everything happened so quickly. Exhausted from the stress of the discussion and the labor, I fell into a deep sleep in the hospital bed. Even when the nurses woke me up occasionally, I barely opened my eyes. After being discharged and returning home with my baby, I asked my parents about the current situation. My mother, as a hairdresser, had subtly spread rumors about Kent among her clients. Our customers are mostly housewives. A word or two from her was exaggerated and spread quickly throughout the town. On the other hand, Kent tried to start an internet sales company, something he was always interested in. He seemed to have underestimated personal connections, seeking solace in the internet. However, his capabilities did not match the power of word of mouth. The rumors prevented him from finding a bank to finance his business, and it failed to take off. He tasted the bitter consequences of underestimating the local community network he had belittled. There was another thing that damaged him. The video call with Sarah. She had used another camera to record the entire discussion. She edited Kent's selfish behavior into a short video and spread it among our high school classmates. As a result, he lost all his friends, and those who might have helped him also turned away. He was left to solve everything on his own. He was immediately kicked out of his family home and spent his days in a motel, depleting his savings while searching for a new home and job. Being unemployed and without a stable address, it was hard for him to settle down. Eventually, he moved to a distant land, as it became uncomfortable for him to stay in the city. He finally found a part-time day job, struggling with the unfamiliar physical labor. Sure, there was no mercy. I warned him that if he ever missed a child support payment, I would sue him for assault for kicking me in the stomach. The photos I took of my injuries in case something happened to the baby proved to be useful. The medical records from when I was treated at the hospital for the injuries would also serve as significant evidence. I filed the divorce papers, and almost concurrently with giving birth, I became a single mother. I was not living alone though. I rent a house and decided to live with Sarah. It was the four of us, Sarah, our babies, and me. The children got along as if they were siblings. Sarah and I were best friends to begin with. With Kent out of the picture, our friendship as women only grew stronger. When one of us needed to step out, the other would take care of both babies, allowing us to manage work and have some time to refresh. We're already talking about taking our kids to the park together for the first time once they're a bit older. For now, I'm looking forward to enjoying this comfortable life.
Come on, swim faster or you'll drown.
From way above me, I could hear the laughter of my husband who had pushed me into the river. I had broken both my legs a month ago. There was no way I could swim. As I desperately struggled to keep from sinking in the cold water, my husband said something. Hearing that, all the patience I had been holding on to felt foolish. My name is Isabella. I'm a 26-year-old office worker. I have a husband, Joe, who is 34 and also an office worker. Though we're a few years apart, his vast life experience has been a support to me in many ways. Joe and I met at work, where he was my boss. Initially, Joe made the first move, but I was drawn to him for his competence and leadership in various situations. Our relationship smoothly progressed to marriage. Working for a company with branches nationwide, I transferred to a different branch after getting married, feeling nervous yet fulfilled in my new environment. As a dual-income couple, we shared household chores. This company is ideal for me, eager to learn everything I can here, making studying indispensable even amidst a busy schedule. Joe also worked late, which motivated me to do my best. Being in the same company, we could easily understand what the other was working on and share daily events, making conversations with Joe very enjoyable. Initially, things were going well, but at some point, when I consulted Joe about work as usual. So you've gotten to handle such tasks now? Well, do your best. He responded somewhat coldly. The Joe I knew before would listen until I was satisfied and think of solutions together. I felt a bit lonely, but wondered if I had been a burden. Joe was busy, and I was no longer a newcomer. Telling myself that I should be able to solve things on my own by now, I consulted my new boss when in real trouble and tried not to discuss work at home. Then, on payday, "How much did you earn this month?" Joe asked for the first time. We had agreed to contribute a fixed amount from our salaries for living expenses and bills without knowing each other's exact incomes. It was unusual for Joe to ask such a question, but seeing no reason to hide it, I showed him my payslip. Then Joe, shocked, said,
"All this without overtime. Don't joke with me. When did you start earning so much?"
Far from being happy about the increased household income, Joe started treating me with a hostile attitude from that day on. Looking back, I remember hearing that Joe had an unusually high pride and only liked being around people who could boost his self-esteem.
"It's because I've been sharing the housework that you can earn like this. I want to get promoted too, but I've been holding back."
Joe said that and instructed me to take over all the household chores.
"A wife should play a supporting role to her husband and be modest,"
he said abusively. Shocked, but verbally compliant. "Understood. Please focus on your work," I said, while internally taking it as a challenge to manage all the housework and still excel at my job. However, seeing me juggle work and all the household chores, Joe would say things like,
"I wish you'd just break down already,"
or,
"Can't you clean more thoroughly? I hate it when the room doesn't look like a showroom."
I tried to brush it off, but it was undeniably stressful. Perhaps it was wrong to keep thinking about divorce every day, whether at home or work. One day on my way to work, I missed a step on the station stairs and tumbled down a long way. I don't remember falling, but it must have been a bad fall because I ended up breaking both legs. Fortunately, no one else was involved in the accident during the morning rush, but I had to be hospitalized for a while. When Joe visited the hospital, he seemed annoyed and laughed.
"Lately, you've been too proud of your work success. This is your punishment,"
and said,
"Your fractures are nothing serious, so come back home soon,"
and left. After that, Joe did visit daily but only to angrily say,
"The house is dirty, come back soon,"
without a word of concern for me. I explained the situation to my workplace and started working from the hospital. When Joe tried to take away the laptop, saying,
"You're really greedy for money. I told you not to earn more than me,"
I quickly responded,
"I've already informed my boss, and I have work scheduled today. If you don't give it back, I'll have to call and say you took it,"
which made him return it with a click of his tongue, perhaps fearing it would become widely known since we work at the same company. Despite expressing how much he disliked me, Joe continued to visit my hospital room daily after work to complain. Upon finally returning home after my hospital stay, the room was extremely dirty.
"I've left your work for you. You love work and housework, so you must be happy,"
Joe said, but I was still in a wheelchair, unable to walk. Trying to clean what I could reach, like the desk.
"Wait, you still can't stand and work? Taking too long to heal. Isn't it because you're always sitting in that wheelchair?"
He criticized. I wanted to divorce him right there and then, but I couldn't move properly until my legs healed. I couldn't tell the hospital, where I had planned to have Joe take care of me post-divorce, that I wanted to be readmitted, so I endured until I fully recovered, thinking it was just a matter of patience. I told myself that overcoming this would make me stronger, and I'd divorce Joe, living each day without consulting anyone. One day, Joe's attitude changed completely.
"How about we go see a movie? There's something I want to see,"
he suggested. Though I felt a bit happy, the change was so drastic that it felt odd, so I replied,
"It's unusual for you to suggest that. I still have chores to do, so feel free to go by yourself."
But Joe said,
"Actually, my boss found out about my behavior and your situation and gave me an earful. I've been a burden till now, so I want us to go together. We haven't been out recently, and I want Isabella to take a break as a token of my gratitude."
Then he asked,
"What else needs to be done?"
and took care of everything. It had been a while since we went out together. Though I was suspicious, Joe tends to change his attitude quickly if someone in a position of authority speaks to him. If his boss had spoken to him, maybe he truly wanted to change. With that thought, I felt slightly happy, and given how tense I'd been every day, I decided to indulge in the break and agreed to go out. He helped me into the car, and we started our drive. The cinema was relatively close, so I didn't think it would be too much of a burden for him to drive, but we kept moving away from the direction of the cinema I knew. Curiously, I asked,
"Isn't the cinema in that direction?"
Joe replied with a smile,
"The local cinema wouldn't feel special, right? I thought we'd go to a bigger one today."
Feeling reassured, I let Joe take the lead and soon fell asleep in the car, tired from the daily grind.
"We're here."
Joe's voice woke me up, and we were at a deserted river, with no cinema in sight. Confused, I asked,
"What's going on?"
Joe said,
"The weather's nice, how about we take a commemorative photo?"
and grabbed my arm tightly, trying to pull me out of the car. Suddenly frightened, I resisted, but with my legs being weak and the strength of a man being overwhelming, I was forcibly dragged out. Without being put back in my wheelchair, the pain of dragging my legs made me groan. He dragged me near a bridge, gripping my legs as if to lift me, and I felt a fear like never before.
"Stop!"
I involuntarily screamed, but with no one around to help, I felt nothing but despair at the thought of being thrown off. Then Joe, checking to make sure no one was around and annoyed, said,
"Damn it! Don't make a noise! It'll be trouble if someone calls the cops,"
and forcefully pushed me into the river. It happened in an instant. Unlike in dramas, I didn't see the face of the person pushing me or my life flash before my eyes. I just fell into the river. In an instant, not understanding what had happened, I looked up from the river, desperately asking for help from Joe while angry, but he said,
"Better swim fast or you'll drown. Don't be mad just because you fell into the river. Maybe you need a little hardship, huh?"
And then he tried to leave. I pleaded,
"Please help me. I'll do anything you say from now on."
Even though I didn't mean it, I thought it was the only way to be saved. Still, Joe said,
"You're healed, right? Swim back home,"
and laughed, then left without trying to help, drove away in his car. Desperately wanting to live, I managed to grab onto a floating log, struggling with the pain in my legs and my inability to move properly, let alone my poor swimming skills, teetering between life and death. If no one came to help. Just then,
"Are you okay? Hold on, I'm coming to help you."
a man hurried from the shore. A man with a large empty plastic bottle swam to me, gave it to me for buoyancy, and then pulled me to shore, saving me. After being urgently transported,
"Thank you, really, thank you so much,"
I said to the man, crying from gratitude.
"No problem at all. My name is Brian. I was fishing a bit away and saw a woman being forcibly taken out of a car. I was shocked and sorry I couldn't reach you before you got wet,"
he replied. Despite everything happening so quickly, from being pulled out of the car to being pushed into the river, I was grateful for his help.
"Not at all. You saved my life."
I expressed my thanks. After sharing with Brian and the doctor about Joe's usual behavior at home and what happened this time, both were outraged and immediately reported it. The next day, to witness Joe's arrest, Brian and I went home together. I was still not fully healed, so I was in a wheelchair. The police were waiting for Joe as he returned home from work. Seeing me and Brian, Joe looked between us and mockingly said,
"Did you have an affair and get in trouble with the police?"
"Your life is over." Laughing. Confused by his absurd conclusion, the police said,
"What are you talking about? We're here to take care of you,"
and handcuffed Joe. Joe, yelling, said,
"What did I do? Who is this guy? Explain,"
trying to grab me even as the police restrained him. Astonished, I said,
"Did you forget what you did to me? Dragging me out of the car and pushing me into the river? That's a crime, isn't it?"
Looking straight into Joe's eyes.
"But you're alive, so I don't see why I'd be arrested,"
Joe retorted nonsensically. Being alive doesn't justify anything. Joe didn't apologize for anything he had done. Far from it, he insisted he was not at fault, and to me, he no longer seemed like a husband but something devoid of human compassion.
The act of throwing someone into the river, given the real possibility of death resulting from it, is considered attempted murder,
the police explained carefully. Joe had heard of fractures but never experienced one himself. Many around him had suffered fractures and seemed to live normally, so Joe perceived it as a minor injury.
"I thought fractures healed quickly, and given Isabella's resilience, I assumed she'd easily climb out of the river unharmed,"
Joe argued, claiming his arrest was an overreaction. He also assumed my absence from home was due to my reluctance to do housework, maintaining his innocence. Then, Brian, who had been silent till now.
"All I've heard is you justifying your actions. It seems you're not concerned about Isabella's injuries. From what I witnessed, your indifference is unbelievable."
He spoke up. Joe scoffed.
"You claim to have seen the scene, but there was no one there, was there? Do you have proof you were present?"
To which Brian countered, showing Joe a video.
"There's plenty of evidence."
Though taken from a distance, it clearly captured Joe dropping me into the river.
"When I arrived, Isabella was nearly drowning, teetering on the edge of life and death. You wouldn't have seen, having left after dropping her. It's hard to tell from above, but the current was strong,"
Brian continued.
"From the bridge, it might have seemed deserted, but the shore had people like me fishing, or couples jogging, surprisingly many witnesses. They all provided evidence for Isabella."
Brian proudly showed Joe the videos. Joe's face visibly paled as if in a cartoon.
"This was taken by another couple. As someone with a loved one, I find this unforgivable. They insisted you must pay for your actions."
Brian silenced Joe. Frustrated and unable to retort, Joe could only glare at us. Seeing him, I said, "Showing this in court will certainly demonstrate the malice in your actions." Finally conceding, I'm sorry." Joe apologized. He pleaded, "Please, I have a job. Spare me the arrest and the trial." But I realized his apology was only out of fear of his company finding out. Unforgiven, we proceeded to trial. Upon hearing of the trial, Joe protested.
"I apologized. What more do you want? I'll fight this in court. I won't let you have her way."
His outcry didn't deter me. I was determined to see the trial through. With decisive evidence in hand and Brian's support, I was able to calmly face Joe to the end. Joe insisted that fractures were minor injuries that everyone around him recovered from easily, attempting to depict me as lazy, but no one was swayed. I had been discharged from the hospital to continue rehabilitation at home, as explained by the doctor, not because I was fully healed. Joe's attempt to diagnose me without medical expertise only garnered sympathy for me from everyone present. The judge, after viewing the evidence I brought, handed down a swift prison sentence without probation to Joe, citing the maliciousness of his actions. Even after the verdict, Joe refused to give up.
The judge and police are all deceived. Is she even really fractured? If so, her suffering seems like an act.
And
stop this nonsense and just obey me like before. What happened to you, Isabella?
He ranted. To which I quietly responded, the one who is wrong here is you. Joe's continued slander worsened the judge's impression, extending his sentence, as he inflicted more pain upon himself through his actions. Finally, everything ended, and I was free from Joe through divorce, feeling both exhausted and relieved. The more I put effort into my work, the more Joe used to get angry in the past. But now, I can focus entirely on what I want. It's as if Joe never existed. I concentrate on what's in front of me and steadily build my career. Fortunately, my workplace had no one who undermined others' character. And the depressive state Joe's attitude had induced in me gradually improved, allowing me to reclaim my former self. I also moved out of the cramped house I had lived in, enjoying a more elegant lifestyle, managing household chores and indulging in my interests as if reclaiming my lost time. Life is good now. Maybe marriage isn't for me for a while, I mused, noticing Brian looking at me sadly. The person I am today exists thanks to Brian, who saved me when I was drowning in the river. He was there for me, exhausted in both body and mind, after the trial ended and the divorce was finalized. He accompanied me during my hospital stay and my first trial, which is why I desperately wanted to express my gratitude by inviting him out for a meal on my treat today. Yet, considering Brian's busy daily schedule, I felt it wouldn't be right to invite him out too frequently, so I decided this would be a one-time gesture. Expecting the conversation to remain formal, I was surprised how well we got along, realizing hours had passed. I looked at the watch and realized, sorry for taking up your valuable time. Let's call it a day. I had fun. Thank you, I said, preparing to leave, but Brian asked,
can I invite you out again sometime?
With a smile. Relieved he had enjoyed himself, we parted ways. Following Brian's invitation, we grew closer through multiple meetings, eventually dating and, surprisingly, marrying. Despite my initial apprehensions about a second marriage, Brian proved to be the ideal partner, supporting my career without jealousy or interference, enhancing my performance. Our relationship, built on mutual respect, allowed us to lead vibrant lives. Brian's hobby of fishing became a shared interest, helping me overcome my trauma of nearly drowning. Thanks to Brian's kindness, I've been able to live freely and happily.
You can't even show your grandparents' face, you unfilial person.
With that, my sister looked at me triumphantly. It's been 5 years since I got married, and while taking care of my father at my parents' home, I've been undergoing fertility treatments. My sister got married and was blessed with a child within 6 months. 2 months into her pregnancy, she returned to our parents' home for the birth. When I point out that my sister does nothing around the house, she coldly snaps back at me.
Since you're useless because you can't have children, at least be useful to me.
My name is Johanna, I'm 35 years old. I live with my husband Andrew, and my sister Camilla, taking care of our father, Richard. Andrew and I got married 5 years ago, and we've been struggling to have children, currently undergoing fertility treatments. Camilla also got married and lives in a condominium with her husband, William, who is often away on business trips, leaving her alone at home a lot. Claiming it was for early birth preparation, she moved in with us, where Richard and my husband and I live, 2 months into her pregnancy. Our mother passed away early from illness, so Richard raised Camilla and me by himself. However, Camilla has always been troublesome, causing problems ever since she was a child. In elementary school, she would hit other kids, and Richard was often called to the school to apologize. We hoped she would calm down as she grew older, but that never happened. She kept causing problems until she graduated high school, constantly troubling Richard. Richard had to go around apologizing to people, paying for damages, and was always exhausted from cleaning up after Camilla. Feeling sorry for Richard, I helped around the house as much as I could, cooking and doing laundry, so that he could have a bit of rest. Putting ourselves last, Richard devoted himself to raising us. I wanted to ease Richard's burden, so I studied whenever I had the chance. My hard work paid off, and I was able to attend a prestigious university and land a job at a major company. Now, I work remotely while taking care of Richard. Camilla, who moved in with us a month ago, does not do any housework and doesn't care for Richard, despite the trouble she caused him. Instead, she says, "Hey, big sis, isn't today's dinner too plain? I'm pregnant, so I need nutrition. Make a more luxurious dinner tonight. Oh, and polish my shoes before I go out." She treats me like a housekeeper, ordering me around. My sister, having become pregnant before me, thinks she has the upper hand.
Why don't you take care of your own things for once?
I was stressed out by Camilla's inactivity. Lying on the living room sofa, she glared at me.
You can't even show your grandparents' face, you unfilial person.
She sneered.
What a thing to say!
I would have children if I could. But that's not possible for me. Filled with frustration, I looked down. Seeing my distress, she added insult to injury.
Since you're useless because you can't have children, at least be useful to me.
Camilla snapped coldly. Tears welled up, and I was left speechless, so I left the room. I went to my bedroom and cried into my pillow. Yet, I kept telling Camilla every day that it's better for her and the baby if she moved a bit, and to take care of herself. One day, perhaps in a bad mood.
Enough, you're so annoying. Can't you just leave the house? Just come here for Dad's care and the chores.
She blurted out something outrageous.
If you dislike me that much, why don't you go back home?
To which she replied,
Going back home would just increase my workload. What do you think I'm here for? You're the housekeeper, just listen to what I say and keep quiet.
Camilla said, mocking me. Realizing it was a waste of time, I started preparing for work. While I worked, Camilla lounged on the sofa, eating snacks and watching TV. I debated telling Andrew about the situation but didn't want to drag him into a sibling quarrel. Camilla puts on a good front in front of Andrew, so it probably looks like we're living harmoniously. While I was hanging laundry, "How long are you planning to stay here?" Camilla suddenly asked. "I have to take care of Dad. I can't just leave," I said while hanging the clothes.
It's going to be a problem if you don't leave. The baby is coming soon. You need to free up your room for us.
My husband and I were using the bedroom that Richard used to occupy. This room is the largest in the house. That's impossible. I refused, and she just said, okay, and backed off easily. The next day, while I was working, Camilla, usually lazing on the sofa, seemed to be up to something. Busy with work, I didn't pay much attention until I went to my room and was shocked. The long-running manga I had collected since childhood, and the accessories and clothes I bought as a reward for myself upon employment were all gone. Instead, the floor was covered with baby items. I rushed down the stairs and confronted Camilla relaxing in the living room.
Camilla, where did you put the stuff from my room?
Eh?
It was in the way, so I sold it. If you're not leaving, we need the space. Your room is going to be the baby's room. I cleaned it up for you, so you should be thankful,
she said nonchalantly, showing no sign of remorse.
It's unacceptable to sell someone's belongings without permission. Bring them back now.
I'm usually calm, but I couldn't remain so this time. Each item was filled with memories and treasured by me.
Why are you so angry? You always say to move if I can, so I did while I could. There's no money left, just give up,
she said, disinterestedly shifting her gaze back to the TV. Among the items Camilla sold was the engagement ring Andrew had given me. I insisted she buy it back, but she claimed she had no money and went back to her room. I told Andrew about everything that had happened so far, including today's incident, and apologized for the engagement ring being sold. Andrew was shocked to hear the story but immediately went to buy back the ring, and thankfully, we were able to retrieve it. Since then, I started paying more attention to Camilla's actions. I noticed that Camilla goes out a lot for someone who is pregnant. She lazes around during the day, but leaves in the evening and often returns late at night or in the morning. I hadn't worried about it before since Camilla has always been more active at night, but I wondered what she could be doing while pregnant. I discussed it with Richard and Andrew, and we decided to investigate her actions. One day, I secretly followed Camilla, who had dressed up and left the house. She walked confidently, as if she knew exactly where she was going, and entered a busy downtown area. She stopped in front of a hotel and waited for someone. A man arrived, and it was clear he wasn't William. I had suspected something, but seeing them enter the hotel arm in arm confirmed my fears. I immediately contacted William. When I told him about Camilla's affair, he was shocked, having thought she had come back home early for the birth, but he quickly hired a detective agency to investigate. William reported the investigation results to us while Camilla was out. The investigation confirmed Camilla's affair. Moreover, from conversations between Camilla and her lover, Johnny, it was revealed that the child Camilla was carrying was Johnny's. Hearing the report, Richard turned pale and, in tears,
William, my foolish daughter has done something terrible. She's ruined her life. I don't know how I can ever make amends.
He apologized to William.
Richard, please don't apologize. I'm angry at Camilla, not at you. We may be family, but we are different people. It's my fault for not seeing her true nature.
Camilla betraying such a man of character was beyond foolish. We agreed to gather on Saturday when Camilla would be home, and then we adjourned. Saturday. The sound of the front door opening echoed.
I'm sorry for intruding.
William appeared in the living room.
William, you didn't say you were coming today. What's up? The baby's gotten quite big, hasn't it?
Camilla, rubbing her belly, smiled and spoke to William, oblivious that he knew everything.
Camilla, is the child in your belly really mine?
William asked Camilla without changing his expression.
What are you saying? Are you accusing me of cheating?
Camilla angrily retorted to William's words.
Camilla, I know everything. The child is Johnny's, isn't it? I had a detective agency investigate, so lying is pointless. I can't continue a marriage with someone who cheats. Let's get a divorce.
William spoke calmly and matter-of-factly. Camilla, panicking, tried to pretend she knew nothing.
William, what are you talking about? The child in my belly is yours. We're not getting a divorce.
Camilla denied it, but William placed the photos from the detective agency of Johnny and her on the table.
Can you still say you haven't cheated after seeing these?
Camilla looked shocked at the photos, but claimed,
It's not what it looks like. He was just giving me advice. It's terrible you would doubt me.
There's no need for hotel meetings for advice, I retorted, frustrated by Camilla's refusal to admit her affair.
So, how do you explain this?
William played an audio recording obtained by the detective agency.
Camilla, your belly has gotten quite big.
Yes, it's because it's your child. It's going to be adorable.
He doesn't know it's my child, does he?
Don't worry, William is clueless.
I married him for his money anyway. I want to raise your child without any financial troubles, so it had to be someone wealthy.
William stopped the recording there.
Too bad I found out, he said.
Camilla's face turned pale. Upon hearing the audio for the first time, Richard, with his face flushed red and shaking with anger.
Camilla, do you not have a conscience? All you think about is using people. It's high time you learn some shame,
he exclaimed. Perhaps realizing there was no way out, she defiantly retorted.
It's my child, no matter who the father is. It will be Dad's first grandchild regardless, so what's the problem? I'm going to have this child and raise it here.
Unable to contain my anger at Camilla's defiant outburst.
Camilla, how much trouble do you have to cause Dad before you're satisfied? Do you have any idea how much you've made him suffer because of you?
I yelled louder than I ever have before. Camilla turned to me.
A useless person who can't even have children has no right to speak. Dad would be happier living with me, who can show him a grandchild's face, than with an unfilial person like you.
And she laughed triumphantly as if she had one.
What did you say? I exploded. Jealous because Dad pays more attention to me, right? Always playing the perfect student, but now you're the inferior one because you can't have children. The baby chose me, not you, so you should leave this house. What do you know, Camilla? How much do you think I've suffered because of you? Both of you, stop. Camilla, I don't care about the grandchild, just leave.
Richard intervened. Camilla looked stunned by Richard's demand.
Eh? Dad, why do I have to leave? It should be her. Camilla, I'm done cleaning up your messes. I can't deal with this anymore. I don't care about seeing the grandchild. Just leave within a week.
Camilla couldn't accept Richard's words. That's cruel. Dad, are we not family? And with that, she began to cry.
You only think about yourself, acting out of self-interest. You've belittled Johanna and now betrayed William. You might want my inheritance, but I've decided to leave most of it to Johanna, who has sincerely taken care of me and kept our home together.
Richard declared this in front of everyone. Soon after, William added,
Camilla, please sign here. I'll be filing for divorce immediately after this. And don't forget about the alimony.
Camilla, cornered by everyone, slammed the table.
Is it fun for all of you to gang up on me? What's wrong with loving someone I truly care about? I've always loved Johnny. You should be grateful that a dull man like you got to marry me and was about to have a family.
She yelled.
Is that all you have to say? Then sign quickly.
William remained calm throughout. He no longer seemed to regard Camilla as a fellow human. His look was akin to observing an animal.
If you divorce me, you'll never find another wife, William. Don't come regretting it later.
Camilla angrily signed the divorce papers and threw them at William. William filed the papers immediately, and they became strangers. The next day, just to be sure, a DNA test was conducted to confirm if the baby really was Johnny's. The test scientifically proved the baby wasn't William's, and when Richard told Camilla to leave, "Why should I be the one to leave? Shouldn't the failure over there leave?" Camilla lashed out. Having no place to go after being kicked out, Camilla went to Johnny's, only to run into his wife. A confrontation ensued, leading to Johnny's divorce. Camilla, playing the tragic heroine denied true love, happily remarried the man she truly loved, and gave birth to a healthy baby. Johnny, who had entered into a marriage of convenience due to his failing family business, lost his financial support and assets. Previously a nominal president at his wife's company, Johnny couldn't find work anywhere and resorted to part-time jobs to scrape by. Camilla and Johnny, living in a cheap apartment with shared toilets and no bath, struggled with living expenses due to alimony payments to Johnny's ex-wife and William. Constant financial stress led to frequent arguments, and despite wanting a divorce, neither could afford to leave, resulting in a loveless marriage. Where did their true love go? Camilla struggled daily with odd jobs, part-time work, childcare, and household chores. Unaccustomed to housework, the home was always a mess. Camilla, who had always lived lavishly on others' money, now wore old clothes and an apron, a stark contrast to her former stylish self. Despite their hardships, both put effort into parenting. I returned to a peaceful life, taking care of Richard. I occasionally keep in touch with William, who I worried might become distrustful of women. However, he reconnected with his first love at a reunion and is now in a serious relationship. The day William told me he had a girlfriend, I received another piece of joyful news. Our continued fertility treatments were successful, and we were expecting a child. Actually, twins. We shared the news with Richard, and now the three of us eagerly await the arrival of our babies. Stop leeching off me, you useless thing. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, Thomas continues. Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right? But... Quiet. I don't want to hear your excuses. Thomas raises his voice. Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a 50-year-old housewife, married to Thomas for 25 years. Our son Richard, born a few years into our marriage, graduated from college and started working this year. Now my childrearing days have come to an end, I can finally do what I want. That's what I'm thinking now. But there's one problem. It's my relationship with Thomas. He is neither a good husband nor a good father. In fact, it's hard to find anything good about him. He cheats, and he doesn't properly contribute to the household expenses. Please, at least bring in enough for the living expenses. Huh? Don't get cocky when you're living off me. That's always his response. Maybe it's hopeless. Should I consider divorce? Lately, I've been thinking about it more and more. But I can't easily bring myself to mention divorce. The truth is, his father, Joseph, who is currently hospitalized and in poor health, entrusted Thomas to my care. I have to be grateful to Joseph and bear it as long as I can. His words can't be ignored. But the desire to divorce is strong. Caught between these conflicting emotions, I find myself reminiscing about happier times before our marriage. The trigger for that past happiness was a misfortune that befell my father, David. My family runs a small eatery. My father was in charge of cooking, and my mother served the customers. Needless to say, the food was delicious. But my father was incredibly bad at business. His dream was to feed delicious food to the customers. As many people as possible. A noble idea, I think. But that was the only thing he focused on in running the eatery. So he doesn't really think about profitability. Profit didn't matter as long as the customers were satisfied. That was his way of doing business. Obviously, it wasn't profitable. Consequently, our family finances were always tight. Nevertheless, as a child, I was proud to see the satisfied customers. So I never interfered with my father's business. However, during my college years, a crisis struck. The company supplying ingredients to our eatery went bankrupt due to unforeseen circumstances. We've already paid this month's bill. If this continues, we might have to close our restaurant. Our situation was already difficult. There was no extra money to spare. Seeing my parents so upset made me anxious, but as a college student, there wasn't much I could do. And it was unlikely that the bankrupt company could refund. Our only option seemed to be closing our eatery. That's when a regular customer of the eatery said, "Closing this eatery? It's too good for that. What a waste. But the company supplying us has gone bankrupt, and now we're in debt. Then let me help you personally, and you can revive the eatery with that." The regular, truly lending the money immediately to my father. "You've saved us. We'll definitely repay you. Don't worry about the money for now. Just keep making delicious meals." Saying that, the man left the shop. Afterward, my father started dealing with a larger food wholesaler, which offered ingredients at a cheaper rate. Fortune seemed to smile upon us, and our family's eatery was saved from bankruptcy. About a year later, I went with my father to return the money to that regular customer. While my father and the man talked, a young man approached me. "It seems you've borrowed money from my father." Listening to him, I learned that he was the son of the man who lent us money. His name is Thomas, and he works for his father's company. "You're beautiful. How about going out with me sometime?" "Me? Go out with you? Why not?" Think of it as a way to say thanks for the loan. It's true that we were helped by the loan. But my father had already properly thanked him. I don't feel obliged to go that far, but as I thought this, Thomas whispered to me, "The daughter of an eatery owner is ungrateful." I could spread that around, you know. But that's... I couldn't talk back. Even if he did spread rumors, I don't think it would harm me. But it could trouble my father. And what would the customers think? With these thoughts, I couldn't refuse his offer. I don't like it, but I'll tolerate it this once. With that thought, I went out with him. But it turned out to be more fun than I expected. He was interesting to talk to, and he knew lots of places to go. The restaurants he chose were all tastefully picked. Despite my initial bad impression, he might be a good person after all. Maybe it was wrong to think that way. I soon found myself being asked out by him. "I have fun when I'm with you." "I have fun too. It is my first time that I can think about marrying." "If that was to you who are serious and good girl." Swayed by his simple words, I started a relationship with him, considering marriage. After that, he continued to guide me in various ways. Eventually, a few years later, I found myself married to him. Of course, I never thought at the beginning of our marriage that it was all a trap by him. He seemed genuinely kind, and I felt loved by him. But it was all a lie. As soon as we got married, his attitude changed drastically.
Here, this is my salary for the month. Manage it well.
I opened the envelope he handed me. It was a salary statement. The salary itself was transferred to the bank, so it wasn't strange to receive only the statement. What struck me as odd was that the statement was handwritten. Nowadays, it's almost unheard of. But when I got married, 25 years ago, it was a time when personal computers were just becoming widespread, so a handwritten statement wasn't out of place. There's over $1,000, so it should be enough, right? I murmured to myself, trying to be convinced. I managed our life with that small amount of money. As our marriage continued, I gradually felt something was off. It was his lifestyle. He left home at a fixed time every morning. But his return was never at a set time. It varied day by day. I'm busy with various jobs as my father's successor. Then, could you call before coming home?
Stop nagging. All right, I'll call.
He shouted. His attitude made me feel even more uneasy. Maybe he's out playing around. Perhaps he even has an affair. I had these thoughts, but I was too scared of his shouting to confront him. In the end, I couldn't say anything, despite my doubts about his behavior. Eventually, our son Richard was born. I thought maybe he'd change a bit with a child. But he remained the same. Looking back, I think that's when I started considering divorce. Then, when Richard was about middle school age, I got a call from my mother while I was out shopping for dinner.
What? Dad's in the hospital.
It was news of my father's hospitalization. I rushed to the hospital.
Mom's just exaggerating.
My father laughed heartily. I felt relieved. But in that moment, I remembered something and my heart leaped.
Oh no! I forgot to contact Thomas.
By then, it was too late. My mobile phone was filled with countless calls from him. When I called back in a hurry, his displeased voice came through. Where are you?
What are you doing? Hurry back and make my dinner.
I'm sorry. My father.
Huh? Your father? Your own father?
Thomas asked in a slightly harsh tone. I answered in a small voice. Yes. He was suddenly hospitalized.
Your father has nothing to do with it. You are my wife.
I closed my eyes in fear at his shouting. I'm terrified of his loud voice. But I couldn't just let it go without responding. I braced myself and retorted.
Isn't it natural to worry about one's father? That should be okay, right? Shut up. Don't talk back to me.
No, I will say this.
You would rush to your own father's side, wouldn't you?
When I asked this, he suddenly fell silent. Putting himself in my shoes must have struck a chord. I thought so, but his reply was beyond my imagination.
Huh? Even if my father was hospitalized, I'd ignore it. After all, I wouldn't be troubled if he wasn't around.
I was speechless. This has to be a lie. That's what I thought, but I couldn't deny it. After much hesitation, I had said this to him. I'm not like you.
Sorry, but eat out tonight.
That was all I could say, my maximum effort. I hung up the phone, still in a daze. Since that incident, I truly couldn't believe him anymore. It was then that I finally realized that the happy times before our marriage were all an illusion.
Ah, I see. He wanted a housekeeper, not a wife.
Saying it out loud made me sad. But I couldn't just stay sad.
That's right. If I'm going to divorce, I need to prepare.
I started to prepare for the divorce. And then, a few years passed. This time, Thomas's father, Joseph, was hospitalized. And his condition was quite serious.
He might not be able to leave the hospital,
the doctor had said. I relayed Joseph's condition to Thomas. But Thomas remained unbothered.
Does it mean it'll cost money?
It's not the time to worry about money, don't you understand?
I get it. I'll talk to my brother.
Thomas contacted his brother James. James is married but doesn't have children. So Thomas suggested to James that he might be able to bear the hospital expenses.
Can you pay for it? We have Richard and Elizabeth, and it's tough for us.
He spoke as if it was someone else's problem. It reminded me of the time my father was hospitalized. It seemed he really didn't care about Joseph. I couldn't take it anymore.
Enough. I'll figure something out and pay for Joseph's hospital bills.
Don't forget what you just said, Thomas shouted. I nodded firmly. In the end, my words triggered us taking on the burden of Joseph's hospital expenses. Also, due to his illness, Joseph stepped down from his position as the president. And Thomas took over as the president. Regardless, Thomas didn't like that I had spoken up. Since then, he blatantly stopped coming home. Even when discussing Richard's future plans. Thomas ignored my calls and didn't return home.
Dad's not coming home again today.
I'm sorry, Richard. I'm causing you trouble.
It's okay, I don't care about Dad. But I want to go to a university in Boston. That's right. Don't worry about the tuition, I'll manage it somehow.
Soon after, Richard's enrollment in a Boston university was confirmed. Naturally, Thomas didn't see Richard off. Once Richard moved to Boston, the house suddenly became quiet. By then, Thomas was only coming home about once a week.
There's also Joseph's hospital fees. Could you transfer a bit more?
Huh?
I've already transferred over half of my salary. It should be enough for you alone.
The amount Thomas transferred was just a little money. Clearly, it was only a fraction of his salary. Saying over half was definitely a lie. I knew that. But I didn't have the energy to complain. Years passed, and I received news that Richard had found a job. Richard has got a job now. It's probably a good time to talk about divorce. In these years, I had prepared for the divorce. It was just a matter of timing. When and where should I say it to avoid any trouble? Such thoughts constantly occupied my mind. It's not even about not wanting to cause a scene. I laughed at myself sarcastically. Then one day, I had been to visit Joseph. After chatting with Joseph as usual, I returned home. Reaching the entrance, I was startled. For some reason, the front door was unlocked. Could it be a burglar? Tentatively, I peeked inside the house. Then I heard the sound of the TV and Thomas's laughter coming from the living room. So Thomas was home. Relieved, I entered the living room. There, Thomas was watching TV, laughing loudly.
You were home.
Yeah,
I thought I'd tidy up the house a bit. Tidy up?
His words made me look around. On closer inspection, some items in the room were missing.
Wait, it looks like some things are missing.
Yeah, I threw them out.
Your stuff.
Threw out?
My things?
Shocked, I hurried back to my room. The room was empty. No computer, no TV, not even my favorite cup. Even the bed was gone.
What's the meaning of this?
I don't need them anymore, so I threw them out.
Don't need them? What am I supposed to do now?
I shouted, and Thomas frowned. Then he looked away and sighed. I guess.
I'm tired of supporting you. What are you saying? I'm your wife.
I retorted, and Thomas seemed irritated. He suddenly raised his voice.
Do I have to spell it out?
Stop leeching off me, you useless thing. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, he continues.
Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right? But... quiet. I don't want to hear your excuses.
He raises his voice. Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him.
What? Got a complaint? None. If you want me out, then I'll leave as you wish.
I slammed the living room door shut, heading to my room. But there was nothing of mine left.
Don't bother looking. I had the garbage collectors take everything away. Which company did you use? The flyer is right there.
That's the one. I picked up the collector's flyer from the floor. As I called the number, I told him,
I'll make sure you regret this.
Saying that, I left the house. Soon the call connected. I explained the situation, and they understood immediately. Apparently, they had sensed something off about his behavior. The garbage collectors had kept everything as it was when they picked it up.
I'll be there shortly. Thank you.
I thanked them politely and hung up. Afterward, I visited the collector's location. I expressed my gratitude and had them move my belongings to a newly rented storage unit. I was relieved to find my belongings safe. He shouldn't think I'll just let this go. Grinding my teeth, I called Richard. I briefly explained the situation and then said,
So, I've decided to move out, considering a divorce. Richard, prepare yourself, okay?
Oh, okay. Bye. Richard quickly ended the call. He seemed scared of me. Was I that angry? I wondered, storing my mobile phone in my bag. Then I headed to a nearby business hotel. Actually, I had already decided where to move. The reason was simple. I was planning to discuss divorce with Thomas soon. Divorce and then move there. That was my plan for starting a new life. Well, it's just a bit earlier than planned. Honestly, I wasn't in trouble. It was just moving things forward by about 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a hotel. What a waste. Can't be helped. But as a housewife, I couldn't help but think it wasteful.
Maybe I should bill him for this hotel stay? Well, whatever it is, brace yourself, Thomas.
I muttered and then started working on my post-divorce plans. About 10 days into my stay at the business hotel, Thomas called me during lunch. As soon as I answered, Thomas raised his voice.
You took my money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. It's about Dad's hospital bills. The hospital just called asking for payment.
Oh, that's what he's talking about. I sighed as I replied.
You should be the one paying, shouldn't you? I'm no longer related to this, having been kicked out. You've been receiving living expenses from me. It should have been paid from there.
Yes, that's true.
But isn't the debit card for that bank account with you now?
I retorted calmly. However, I knew there was no money in that bank account. That's why I couldn't stop laughing.
I have the debit card, but there's no money in it. That's why I'm saying you took it.
I didn't take anything.
Don't lie. Who else could use it?
Didn't he realize that he had transferred too little? I replied in disbelief.
It was just too little money from the start. If there's no money for the hospital bills, why not use your own allowance? Allowance.
He started to panic, visibly confused. It seemed he thought I was unaware. Since the beginning of our marriage, he had been giving me handwritten salary statements. It was to hide the fact that he was siphoning off a portion of his salary. In other words, the skimmed money was his allowance.
I once asked Joseph about your salary. How much is Thomas earning? So, that's. He looked puzzled but told me. So, I knew about the skimmed money.
As I told him, he fell silent. There was a long silence, making me wonder if the call had dropped. Then suddenly, he raised his voice.
What's wrong with using the money I earned? It's your fault for using up the money I gave you.
Okay. So?
We're getting divorced. I'm going to demand compensation. You'll pay back the money you spent.
At that, I sneered. Perfect timing, I had evidence. Now Thomas couldn't escape the truth. I responded with a smile.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to get divorced too. Come to my place for the divorce discussion. What? No, but. You want to divorce, right? I've prepared evidence of your affair and am waiting.
Though I couldn't see him, his voice sounded strained.
Evidence of an affair? What are you talking about?
No use pretending.
I have the evidence photos. Evidence photos?
I could almost see him getting pale. Suppressing my laughter, I continued.
Then, I'll give you the address. Let's meet next Sunday to discuss in detail.
I gave him the address of a certain location and quickly ended the call. I had successfully set up the divorce confrontation. Now, if only I could make him apologize. Honestly, that would be the trickiest part. I steeled myself for the upcoming meeting. On the promised Sunday. I was already at the meeting place before the scheduled time. I wondered when he would arrive. Looking around, I spotted Thomas in the corner of my eye.
Over here!
I waved and called out. He looked up, surprised. Here?
Yes. Didn't I give you the address? But, this place, whose mansion is it?
Thomas looked behind me. There stood a mansion worth about $1 million. Much larger than a normal house, with a garden. A 3-story building with a basement and a theater room. Luxury cars parked in the built-in garage. Pointing at the mansion, I said with a smile.
This is my house. It's newly built, so it's beautiful, right? Your house? Yes. I thought I'd live here after the divorce, so I started building it a while ago.
Yes, the place I had called him to was my newly built house. Thomas, thinking of me as just a housewife, was understandably shocked. Pushing him from the back, I led him into the house. I guided him to the living room.
Let's start our discussion. This is my lawyer.
I introduced my waiting lawyer. But Thomas was too distracted. Restless, his gaze never settled. He kept looking around, not even trying to see the evidence photos of his affair on the table. Also, he didn't respond when spoken to. Frankly, the discussion was unproductive. Eventually, he asked in a quiet mutter.
How did you afford this house?
While thinking, is that what you're curious about? I answered. I just bought it, normally.
Liar! A housewife can't afford to buy a house.
It's said that to buy a $1 million house, one needs an income of around $150,000 per year. But I have that kind of income. So, I answered calmly.
I earn that much.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, but how? I started helping out at a friend's company, and before I knew it, things turned out like this.
The story goes back a few years. When I decided to divorce during my father's hospitalization turmoil, I started preparing for it. The first thing I did was look for a job. I wouldn't be able to live without a job after the divorce. So, I searched for a job to sustain myself. But good jobs aren't easy to find. That's when I consulted my close friend Linda.
Why don't you help me out with my work?
What kind of work do you do? Aquaculture on land. Land-based aquaculture involves artificially creating facilities like pools for farming. There are downsides, of course, but it prevents ocean pollution. It's an eco-friendly type of farming. Linda's father started it, and now Linda had taken over. So, you had been working there? Thomas asked tentatively.
After I started helping, the business began to thrive.
I was mainly involved in negotiations and administrative work. Linda was grateful for my help, and eventually, I was promoted to an executive position. It was all coincidental, but I believe luck is part of one's capabilities. Hearing my story, he looked dejected. Then, after a moment of thought, he suddenly looked up.
Okay. Let's pretend this divorce talk never happened. How about we start over?
As he spoke nonsense, I coldly replied. Are you crazy?
No, I genuinely want to start over with you.
Thomas pleaded fervently. But seeing that he was only dazzled by my money, I retorted with a raised eyebrow.
I refuse to be with someone who cheats. And someone who neglects Joseph. No, about my father. Enough. You don't know, but I was the one paying for Joseph's hospital bills.
The money Thomas gave me was really just a little. After paying for food, utilities, and other expenses, there was usually nothing left, sometimes not even enough. He only gave me that much. Obviously, there was no way to pay Joseph's hospital bills with it. At first, I managed somehow, but later I paid them with my salary.
And yet, you never listened to me or visited Joseph.
Well, that's because
I can't trust someone like that.
I raised my voice, and he fell silent. Then, the lawyer discussed the compensation. Thomas couldn't say anything. He just kept his head down until the end. Eventually, prompted by the lawyer, Thomas signed the divorce papers. The compensation was set at $30,000.
So, now that the divorce is settled, you'll pay Joseph's hospital bills.
Ah. Thomas nodded reluctantly. At least he didn't argue. I felt relieved. Finally, I sent him away, as if chasing him out. It's over at last. The only regret was that he never apologized. But I had one last card to play. If I played it, he would apologize. Thinking that, a smile crept onto my face. A few days later, after leaving the company, someone called out to me from behind.
Hey, Elizabeth!
Turning around, I saw Thomas standing there.
Don't address me so familiarly. We're divorced. Shut up! What did you do?
He looked at me with an angry, red face. His reaction told me everything. Ah, he must have heard that news at the company. I smiled and responded. What do you think I did?
Don't joke around. Tell me how you got me fired.
He stomped his foot. His frustration amused me, and a smile escaped.
Isn't it your own fault? Getting punished for having an affair with the office clerk?
His affair partner was a clerk at his company. Apparently, he did whatever he wanted because he was the president. After deciding to divorce, I reported the matter to Joseph. While Joseph regretted our divorce, he was furious about Thomas's actions. When I showed him the affair evidence photos, Joseph became even more angry. Then he said to me, I want to transfer all my company shares to you. To me? What about Thomas's brother?
No, to you. Use them to dethrone Thomas from his position as president.
That was Joseph's plan. His company is a corporation. For a president or any executive appointment, a shareholders' meeting resolution is necessary. Of course, it can also be decided by a board of directors resolution. However, Joseph's company isn't very large. He holds most of the issued shares. This means that as a shareholder, he could make decisions alone. But it's common for small company presidents to hold the majority of shares. If I inherited all of Joseph's shares, I could exercise the voting rights alone. Nevertheless, Thomas's dismissal wasn't my decision. I informed James about acquiring the shares. And only reported Thomas's affair. The rest was up to James' judgment.
James was considerate.
James, huh? Why would he do whatever you say?
It's not about following my orders. It's about doing what's best for the company.
As I said this, Thomas collapsed on the spot. Then, he began to mutter apologies.
I was wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me.
I won't.
If things stay this way, I'll have no job and be left destitute.
That's not my concern. It's all his responsibility.
I won't forgive you even if you apologize. Please! Forgive me! I'm begging you!
He apologized profoundly right there. I turned my back.
Sorry, but there's nothing I can do.
Why not? If you own the shares.
I sold them to James and his wife. I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
At that moment, I heard his sobbing. Of course, I pretended not to hear and walked away. After his dismissal as president, Thomas had to leave the company. He might have stayed if he had been an employee or a working director. But Thomas was arrogant, having joined the company through Joseph's referral. I refused to be an employee. He even said that. So, when he was dismissed, he was kicked out immediately. Now he's working a part-time job at a grocery store, but re-employment at his age is difficult. He's likely to spend his old age in regret and without money. As for me, being divorced allowed me to focus more on my work. There's no talk of remarriage, but I have a few male colleagues. Spring might come again for me. I was thinking about this when Richard called. I'll bring my girlfriend over sometime.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it.
I failed in marriage, but I don't want Richard to. But I'm sure he'll be fine. Richard is much more sensible than me.